guys, welcome to this month's song breakdown, and this month we're going to break down the song My Leviathan off These Paths We Tread. Now if you've seen one of these things before, you know how I do it. I break it down into two halves, where firstly I talk about the song lyrics and perhaps the themes behind it, and then the second half I talk about how the song evolved and how it was kind of made, I guess. So without further ado, let's get on with it. Okay, so My Leviathan. This song is one that is in the mythic realm, I guess, and it's when I was writing a lot of songs for These Paths We Tread, and I was going back into myth and reading up about various myths in various cultures and religions. And actually, Leviathans are something that stretches across a lot of different cultures and a lot of different religions. There are a lot of references to different types of Leviathans. They're basically beasts from the underworld. And that idea captured my imagination of something coming up from underneath and almost in a symbolic sense, I guess, from coming up from the unconscious. Did some research, and there's this Hebrew myth, I think, about a Leviathan that's actually a whale that comes up and basically consumes sinners and drags them down to hell. And that particularly captured my imagination. So I was like, yeah, that sounds like a cool thing to write a song about. But wanting to add an extra element to it on a more subtle level, I also wanted it to be a bit of an allegory for jealousy. And I had this sort of idea in my head of what if the reason that the beast was consuming people was that it was jealous of them, you know, sinning and being able to do those things in their lives where it couldn't. Its only job was to do this one thing, to consume sinners. So I thought that was a little extra spin on it, which I quite enjoyed. So that's basically what My Leviathan is about in terms of lyrics and content. So let's move on to the actual song evolution. So this song is quite different. You'll probably notice right from the start of it, and actually when we were writing the song we noticed how different it was from the other songs that we were writing. Up until now everything had quite a bluesy quality to it, and then all of a sudden this song came along and it definitely was more in their metal realm. And interestingly, it's the only song I think at all that was ever written that started with some ideas of a drum beat. So Chris, who was the drummer at the time, he came up with this quite interesting drum part, and it kind of definitely influenced the way that certain parts of the actual song evolved. And so I think that's the only time that actually happened. I think all the rest of the time he'd put drums to an idea that we had, but this time was driven by the drums. And I think you can tell with the song it's definitely driven by the drum part. And another interesting fact about it is that the at the very start of the song there is this sort of picked part, kind of sounds quite nice, and there's wave sounds going on, and it sounds quite different from when the riff kicks in, which is obviously a lot heavier, a lot more metal. Interestingly, they're actually the same thing, and I wrote what is quite a strange heavy riff because I transposed the interesting picking part and turned it into a riff. And the cool thing about that is I would have never probably written that riff just from the outset. It was the transposing it from a picking part that made me come up with ideas that I never would have thought of before, which is quite a cool thing about this song. I quite like that. In terms of how it evolved, I can probably play you a really early rehearsal recording that I think we recorded in like a sort of a practice room that Chris used to have, like in a sort of converted garage in his house, and I think he was actually playing like an electric kit, but it was actually plugged into a PA, so it sounds interesting. So I'll play you a little bit of that now. So you can see it's still quite recognisable as a song even at the early stages, because it's driven by that drum part and those riffs kind of thing. And then obviously the song started to evolve and we started to put vocals to it, and one of the first things we noticed was when I started to write a sort of a screaming part to it, is that it really reminded us of a band that we were touring with at the time, which is called Victorian Whore Dogs, if you guys remember them. And we were like kind of, oh, that vocal sounds quite a lot like Victorian Whore Dogs, and we were like, yeah. And so then we had the idea of getting one of them to guest on it, so that's where the guest vocal came from, the idea. We literally thought it sounded like a bit of one of their songs, so how could we not get them on it? So that kind of made sense to us. And then it kind of just continued to evolve and eventually became quite a live favourite. And I think also it's one of those songs that helped a lot of metal fans come over to us because it is a little bit heavier. And in the early days, when we would play with a lot more metal bands, it was definitely a song that we noticed the metalers really got into and they were really nodding their heads to. Oh yeah, I really like that song. So that was cool. So yeah, there you go, My Leviathan. Obviously, we continued to play this. It was always a live favourite, and I'm going to leave you with a little bit of live footage of it. I hope you've enjoyed this song breakdown. I'd like to take this opportunity again to say thank you to all the Patreons. Without your support, we couldn't continue to be a band. I couldn't make these videos. Thank you so much to everybody. If you're interested in joining Patreon, I'll put a link for you. Cheers. See you again next month. Bye bye.